What I do remember that night is not a lot of anything. I I remember dropping Parker off at his mom's house, and my friend Chris was wanting to go eat, so we went and ate dinner together. I kind of remember filling up with gas before I left to Lubbock, and that's it. I don't even remember driving. My life was really good. I grew up in a great family, Christian family. Um, I was blessed enough to be really good at sports. Football was my life. I loved track. Um, I was lucky. I always thought I was lucky. What happened was I was driving on the highway and I was going 79 miles an hour because anytime I drive on the highway, it's always 79. And what I was told was I failed to navigate a curve. Um, I think I dozed off and the curve was going towards my right and I kept going straight. And judging on the tire marks, I never went into the median, but I hit those little rumple marks and I probably woke up and jerked my wheel and I rolled. And upon rolling at the end, I don't know when, but I was ejected from my truck and they found me 5 feet laying right beside it. I had 26 total bone fractures. Um, my maxilla, which is your front of your face, your skull right here, it's the toughest, hardest bone in your body. It's the strongest. I shattered mine. I shattered my entire eye orbital. I shattered the front right part of my skull, and my frontal lobe was hanging out of my head. They found me with my brain, part of my brain hanging out. I shattered one of my vertebrae. It was my L2, and broke three other vertebrae. Um, it was my scapula, ribs, collarbone, everything basically waist up. My tailbone and my pelvis was cracked all the way across. I was pretty lucky because there was a truck driver was the first one to find me. He, I was laying a prone position. I was laying face down, and I wasn't breathing. I had no pulse. And the truck driver looked at my truck and saw a car seat. So he was thinking that there was a kid. So he left me and he ran around for a minute or two looking for a kid. And then another guy pulled up and they both went back to me, still no breathing. And they didn't know what to do. So they flipped me over and I woke up. I didn't wake up. I didn't open my eyes. But I started throwing up, teeth, yeah, blood, um, and he noticed I swallowed my tongue. So he grabbed my tongue and held it out to try to keep me breathing. Um, and I was very blessed to have a ambulance passing by. An ambulance had to transport a patient from Lubbock to Amarillo. So they were already right there when they heard the call. And before the ambulance even pulled up, they heard what happened and kind of the extent of my injuries. And one of the paramedics immediately called for airback. And having him call for an airback that soon is what really saved my life because I was picked up. I was given oxygen right when the ambulance pulled up, and then I was picked up by the helicopter and flown to UMC in Lubbock. So they couldn't do anything at first. They tried to get me stable enough to determine anything, because when my parents first got there, the realization of it all was you can take your son off life support whenever you want, because no one thought I was going to make it. Nobody. There was no signs of life. They haven't determined if I was brain dead or not, but my neurologist, he knew that I was going to be brain dead. That's what he said. And it was a couple hours after they said that to my family. They were sitting in my room, and a nurse came in and said they needed to hook me up to another machine. And my parents went out of the room for a couple minutes, and they were shocked to see the nurse run out, yelling for a doctor, for someone. And the nurse looked at my parents and said he opened his eyes. He was sitting there. I kind of played this over in my head. She was sitting there hooking me up to something, and she looked up at my face, and I was just staring at her. It had to have scared her. But that was the first sign of life, and my neurologist came in after that and said we can immediately do brain surgery. So I had major brain surgery, and they got all the debris that was in my head, and my skull was fractured enough where they couldn't save it. After the brain surgery, they waited a day and a half, I think, to 2 days to do my major back surgery. And the back surgery, they were really worried about it because they didn't know if I was going to be paralyzed or if anything. They didn't know the damage yet until they could get in there. Being face down with my face shattered, they were really worried about my brain. I didn't have any bone to separate my brain from my eye. So the amount of pressure my brain was putting on my eye, they thought my eye was going to pop out during surgery. And they were really worried about it. So they built me a customized face mask. And it was a 6-hour brain surgery. And I think my back surgery was an 8.5-hour back surgery. And they got to repair, and there's a sac in the bottom of your spine with all the nerves in it. And that sac got torn open and all my nerves came out. But they got to save every single nerve and put it back in that sac and sew it up. They got all the debris off that one shattered vertebrae and replaced it. And they ended up fusing 7 vertebrae together from my L10 or T10 to L5, which L5 is your bottom one. So the bottom half of my back is metal. So that surgery was amazing. They saved my everything. And after that, they did they did rectum surgery, which they were really worried with all the damage I had to my waist. They were worried of internal injuries, and I had no internal injuries. Thank you. It was just external, so that was good. When I first got to the hospital, when they got me off the helicopter, they rushed me into a room, and I flatlined. They did everything they could. They shocked me. Everything. Nothing worked. Nothing came. My heart, nothing came back. And there was one female nurse that was the last one touching me. She had her hand around my chest. And the head surgeon in the room looked up at the clock to call it. He was about to call it. And the nurse took her hand off my chest and he looked down at my face. And he said nobody was touching me and my chin just opened. And he looked at my oximeter and it started beeping. I took a breath by myself. And I really think that it was the Lord who breathed life back into me. Because that wasn't the first experience I had with him. The only thing I can remember from my wreck was being ejected. I remember flying out of my truck. I don't remember driving, but I remember going out. And I want to say it was like a movie. It was slow motion. And I couldn't think, I had no thought process, but I was staring at the ground and I could see car parts flying past me. And I remember staring at the ground and I was about to hit when my leg, something pulled me. I got stuck. And I looked at my feet thinking it was some seatbelt or something that my leg wrapped around. And my feet weren't touching anything. And I saw fingers under my knee. And right when I saw fingers, I was thinking there's no way that's my hand. And I look up, and there's this man in the middle of the air. It's like he's floating. Everything's still moving, and I'm just making eye contact with him. And he's just looking at me, smiling. He has this beautiful smile. And I can't look away. I just keep staring at him. And everything goes past. I still see things moving. And he's holding me in his arms. And he lets go. If he wasn't there, if he wasn't the one who caught me, I really do believe when I hit the ground I would have died. I would have hit the ground a lot harder than I should have. Judging by my teeth, I hit the ground pretty hard. I know it wasn't a dream. I want to say it was when I flatlined at the hospital. I was sitting on a park bench. Green trees. Everything was so green. And I had that same look on my face as I did when I was falling out of my truck, confused. I couldn't think, I couldn't talk. And I kept looking at all these trees. And it seemed like I was sitting there forever. And then I looked to my right, and it was that same man staring at me, smiling. And this man, he reached towards my face, held his arm slowly going towards my face. And I backed away. I was so scared, I backed away, and he stopped moving, and he just stayed there. He didn't hesitate. He didn't blink. He didn't move his smile. He just held his hand in the air. And it was like he was saying, it's okay. And I moved my head back towards him. And I moved my head back towards his hand. And this man put his hand on my face. I remember something coming into me. Right when he touched my face, something went in me. I felt it. And I want to say that's when I opened my jaw and I took a breath, because he breathed into me. And the hardest part through all of this, I don't know why I'm saying this, but I want to say nothing. Through all this pain and I want to say anger, but I didn't really have anger. It was strange. It was like when I woke up and the first days I can remember, I felt peace. And I've had people ask me questions saying, if you could change anything about your accident, what would it be? What would you change? Would you stop it? And I always instantly respond with no. I wouldn't change a single thing. I'm okay. I'm alive. Yeah, I got banged up, my leg and my head, but I found Jesus. Mm-hmm. I finally opened my eyes, got to see Him, and I wouldn't change a single thing. I remember walking the hallway, the entire length of the hallway for the first time. I mean, I had people on both sides clapping for me. It was amazing. I had one big guy. He had this huge beard. He was a therapist. He would yell at me when I was doing something. I remember standing up on this pathway, holding onto rails, and I had to take steps. And I had my physical therapist. Her name was Kathy, and she would hold my hips in front of me and help me walk. And when I started doing it by myself, he would stand behind me yelling at me. He'd say, "Take one more for me." He'd say, "Take one more for Kathy. Take one more for Jesus." And I'd be at the end of the rail before I even knew it. Those guys and those ladies over there, I can't even put it into words how amazing they are. I felt God in every corner of that facility. He was there. On the outside world, we see each other and we see people, but we don't really say hi, or we don't bother. We don't think it's a big deal. It's my life. I'm gonna do what I need to do. In there, we had this connection with each other, and we opened up, and it was amazing. Parker is my son, who is now 4 years old. We didn't want him to come see me for a little bit when I was in the hospital. They didn't want to have him see me like that. But once I woke up on May 2nd, I remember asking for him, and JC, Parker's mom, would bring him every Friday. They'd come every Friday to see me. And Parker would get so excited, and he would lay beside me in my bed, and he would say stuff like, "Daddy, are you still sick?" And I'd say, "Yes, I'm still sick." And he would touch me everywhere on my body and say, "Get better." He would touch my leg and say, "I hope your leg gets better." He was one of my biggest supporters. He was amazing. Piece of advice I would have for Parker is to love people, no matter what. Everything that has happened, after lots of prayer and talking with my best friend, I've decided that I'm going to pursue counseling. I really want to be a professional counselor, like a state counselor, where I can pretty much do anything. It's not school counseling, but it's more. I want to do more of rehabilitation counseling, where I can not only just work in hospitals, I can work at rehab facilitations, and work with people who go through accidents or go through trouble in life and need help to bounce back, to stand up on their own feet. I think that would be really good. I think I could really help. Some of the issues I'm still having today and I'm still going to therapy 3 times a week, physical therapy. Is I still have nerve damage, and the major nerve damage is in my left leg, and it's in my quad. It's my iliopsoas, which is your hip flexor and your quad. And my hip flexor has gotten a little better, but my quad doesn't fire at all. You sit there and tell me to flex it, I can't move it. It doesn't work. They tell me that it should come back. It just takes a lot of time for nerves to regenerate. The other major issue I have is my vision. My right eye, my left eye is not affected. It's good, but my right eye is the affected. And the best way to explain it is when you look around with both eyes, everything is always level. Everything is always one picture. You're not a chameleon. My right eye now is down, it's over, and it's turned. So if I close my good eye, this entire house is unlevel. We're all going downhill. And seeing double all the time is not fun. I get nauseous. I had multiple therapists. We would do exercises where we would write down goals. And every time, my number one goal was to become love. I just wrote become love. And finally I had one therapist ask me, what does that mean? You write this every time. What does that mean? And right after she said that, I said, who is God? And she stepped back and she was kind of thinking, and she was amazed. And she said, God is love. And I said, well, who do you want to be like? I want to be like God. The way I see myself now is saved. I grew up a Christian. I grew up in a Christian home. But I don't think I ever knew God. And now I want to know Him. I do have my struggles every now and then. But I never ask why. I never ask any of those questions. I'm just thankful for life. I'm alive, and God loves me. And I can now turn my focus onto being His servant and loving other people and helping other people. So I'm very thankful.